Welcome back to the Allison Knows podcast. We are diving deep today, and I'm excited about this one. Genesis,
Yes,
the book of Genesis, chapters 1 through 50.
you're right.
So buckle up, everybody. This is going to be a long one, but a good one.
It's a foundational text, you know? I mean, there's so much in here that has really impacted Western thought, beliefs, and it all starts right here in Genesis.
Right. Like, where do we come from? What's our purpose? Why are we here? All that good stuff.
Exactly. How do we relate to God?
All the big questions.
It's all there.
So we're going to go chronologically, and we're going to be stopping at all the big, like, whoa, that's crazy moments, and really kind of dissecting, like, why are these stories so powerful? Why have they lasted for, all this time? Why do we still tell them today?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like we're piecing together a puzzle, right? Seeing how each story connects to the bigger picture, and it's just fascinating.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Like, in the beginning, creation. Genesis 1, it's like so beautifully written, almost like this grand poem,
Yes.
And it's God speaking the world into existence.
Just speaking things.
Let there be light, and boom, there's light. It's so powerful.
It's evocative.
So evocative. And what's interesting is the structure.
Yes. Tell me about the structure.
The 7 days of creation. And I know 7 has a lot of significance in different cultures, but
Yeah.
why 7?
Well, 7 often represents a sense of completion or perfection,
Okay, that makes sense.
a sense of wholeness.
Yeah.
So you have this cosmic week, right?
Yeah, Cosmic Week.
Each day building upon the previous one, and it just shows this incredible intentionality, I think, in the way that creation unfolds.
Totally. Like light and darkness first,
Yeah.
then the sky separating the waters, then dry land appearing. It's all very deliberate, very intentional, which makes you think about the intentionality of the author and, the intentionality behind this whole thing.
Well, and what's really cool is that you see that emphasis on intentionality and that repeated phrase, and God saw that it was good.
Yeah.
So after each stage of creation, there's this pause, this moment of reflection, and God is taking stock, appreciating the beauty and harmony of what has been made.
And I love how it culminates on the 6th day with the creation of humanity.
Yes.
And this time, it's not just good, it's very good.
Right.
Like there's this sense of completion of purpose being fulfilled.
It's the climax of creation,
Oh,
and it
wow.
leads us to, I think, one of the most profound concepts in Genesis, and that is humanity being created in the image of God, the Imago Dei.
Oh, that's a good one.
It is.
Imago Dei, that's always been one of those, like, really kind of mind-blowing phrases for me.
It is.
Like, what does it actually mean to be made in the image of God?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, theologians and philosophers have been debating this for centuries.
Really?
Right?
Like, for centuries.
Centuries. There's no one answer, I'll tell you that.
Well, let's hear some of them then. What are some of the interpretations?
Some people interpret it as us having a moral conscience, right? A capacity for reason, for creativity, and that sets us apart from all the other creatures.
So it's more about our ability to think, to choose, to love.
Exactly. And that's a big part of it, but others see it as us being given dominion over the earth, responsibility to care for creation.
As God's stewards.
As God's stewards, yeah, to act as God's representatives.
That's a big responsibility.
It is.
Now, it's interesting because Genesis 2 gives us a different perspective on creation, right? It's that, God forming Adam from the dust of the ground and breathing life into him.
It's much more personal, more intimate in a way.
Yeah, it's like a more close-up shot.
Exactly. You can almost feel the breath of God,
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. And then God places Adam in the Garden of Eden, which is this paradise.
Lush and overflowing.
Just abundant, beautiful, gorgeous.
Yeah.
And of course, you have the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that's where things get spicy.
That's where it gets good.
Yeah, the serpent, the forbidden fruit.
Uh-oh.
That's right, the fall.
The fall from grace.
The fall from grace. This is a story that has captivated people for millennia.
For millennia.
Like, why do we still talk about this story today? What is it about it that's so captivating?
Well, I think it's because it's a story about choice,
Right.
about the consequences of our actions, about the complexities of good and evil.
Right. Yeah.
And it all starts with that serpent,
Right.
That crafty, cunning serpent, often seen as a symbol of temptation, deception.
The devil, right.
Yeah. And he approaches Eve and just plants that seed of doubt.
I mean, Eve, she's drawn to this fruit. She wants to know what it's all about.
You can't blame her, can you? That forbidden fruit.
Right. It's like, knowledge. Who doesn't want knowledge?
Exactly. And the serpent promises, you'll be like God. Who wouldn't want that, right?
Right. And Adam, he's right there with her. I mean, They both choose to disobey.
Right. And it's important to remember it's not just, don't eat the fruit. They're warned that eating it will lead to death. Like, this is serious
And
business.
the consequences, I mean, they're pretty swift.
Yes, they are.
Serpent's got to crawl on its belly.
Right.
Eve, pain in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, toil and sweat for your food.
Back-breaking labor.
That's right. Paradise lost.
Paradise lost.
But the impact of this decision, I mean, it's not just about those specific punishments, is it?
No, it's much deeper than that. I mean, you see a fracturing of that perfect relationship that existed between God and humanity.
Yeah.
And that's a theme that's going to echo throughout the rest of the Bible.
And you see it right away with Cain and Abel.
Oh, yeah.
The first murder.
The first murder.
I mean, what a way to start things off after this beautiful creation story, right?
Talk about a turn.
Right. Like sin enters the world so quickly, and violence.
Yeah, it really highlights just how fragile things are, and how quickly human choices can lead to chaos and destruction.
It really is a story of sibling rivalry, like gone bad.
Yeah, taken to a whole other level.
To the extreme, the ultimate extreme. Cain, the farmer, Abel, the shepherd, they both bring offerings to God, right? But for whatever reason, God favors Abel's offering, and it doesn't say why, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's left open to interpretation, which has led to centuries of debate, really.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what are some of the theories? What are some of the ideas behind that?
Well, some focus on the offerings themselves,
Okay.
Abel's offering was from his flock, as a blood sacrifice, and Cain's offering was the fruits of his labor.
Yeah.
And some people have suggested that maybe Abel's sacrifice was seen as more valuable, more costly,
Okay.
while Cain's offering was maybe perceived as less sincere.
Interesting.
But others, they delve into the heart behind the offerings, What was the motivation?
Oh, okay. So, like, was it about what they were offering, or was it about the heart in which they were offering it?
Exactly. And maybe Abel offered with genuine devotion, with a humble heart, while Cain, maybe his offering was driven more by pride or obligation.
So more about checking off the boxes.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, interesting. So whatever the reason, the point is Cain, he's not happy.
No,
He's consumed by jealousy,
yeah.
lashes out, murders his own brother,
And then lies to God about it.
tries to cover it up.
Tries to get away with it.
That line, "Am I my brother's keeper?"
Yeah.
It just sends chills down my spine.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, dude, really? That's your defense.
It's a complete lack of remorse, refusal to take responsibility for his actions.
And he gets punished pretty severely, too.
Oh, yeah.
Cursed to wander the earth, no rest, no sustenance from the ground.
It's a harsh sentence.
And then there's this whole mysterious mark of Cain.
Right, right.
What do you make of that?
Well, the text is intentionally vague, I think, which has, of course, led to lots of speculation over the centuries. Some see it as a physical mark, a brand that sets him apart.
Okay.
Others interpret it as, like, a psychological or spiritual burden, the weight of his sin that he carries with him wherever he goes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like a constant reminder.
A constant reminder of what he's done.
Exactly.
So from this harmony of creation, we have this rapid descent into sin and violence.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's heavy stuff. But then chapter 5 kind of takes a turn, right?
Yeah.
It's these long genealogies tracing the lineage from Adam to Noah and these crazy lifespans. I mean, Methuselah living to be 969 years old. What's up with that?
Yeah.
What is going on?
I know, it's a head scratcher for sure.
Right.
There are so many theories out there, literal interpretations, symbolic interpretations, even the idea that maybe the way time was measured back then was different.
Okay.
But I think the point really is to establish this sense of continuity, a history, showing that despite the presence of sin, humanity endures.
It's like tracing that thread of life through generations, right?
Exactly.
So amidst all these names, we have the birth of Noah and his father, Lamech. He says something really interesting. He's like, "This one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed."
Yeah, it's like this glimmer of hope, in a world that feels very dark.
Yeah, like a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, like maybe things won't always be this way.
There's this anticipation of change, which brings us to, one of the most dramatic stories in Genesis.
Buckle up.
That's right, the flood.
Flood.
It's interesting to consider, like, the contrast between the creation story, this beautiful, very good world, and then, humanity's choices lead to this corruption. and God is grieved by it.
Yeah, God's not this distant, unfeeling being, right?
No, not at all.
God cares deeply about what happens to humanity.
Okay, so what happens next?
Well, God decides to start over to cleanse the earth with this massive flood.
It's like a reset button.
Yeah, a cosmic reset.
Wow.
But in the midst of all this destruction, God chooses Noah.
And Noah, he's described as just and perfect in his generations.
Right.
But it's interesting. It's not like he's perfect in some absolute sense.
No, it's relative to his generation.
Yeah, like he's the best of a bad bunch.
Right, which I think is kind of encouraging, right?
Yeah.
Even in a world consumed by wickedness, there can still be those who strive to live righteously.
So God chooses Noah, and then, God's like, okay, Noah, time to build an ark.
Yeah, and these are some wild instructions, right?
Wow.
This massive wooden vessel, very specific dimensions.
It's like blueprints from God.
Right, designed to house Noah, his family, and 2 of every living creature.
2 of every living
2
creature.
of every kind, that's right.
I mean, can you imagine the logistics of that?
The logistics are mind-boggling, just the sheer scale of it.
Yeah. And Noah's like, okay, sure, no problem.
He doesn't question.
He just does it. That's a lot of faith.
It is a powerful symbol of faith.
Yeah.
You know? Noah had to trust in God's plan, even though, let's be honest, it seemed completely illogical.
Totally. Like, what do you talk about, God? What is this big boat going to do?
Right. I mean, who's ever heard of a flood?
Exactly. So the ark becomes this, vessel of salvation, this testament to obedience and trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, boom, the deluge.
It's like all hell breaks loose.
Right. 40 days and nights of rain.
Torrential rain.
The earth submerged.
Yeah.
Everything gone.
It's a judgment on humanity's sin.
A catastrophic event.
It's a new beginning, too, though, right?
Oh, okay. How so?
I mean, after the waters recede, Noah and his family, they disembark, and God establishes a covenant with them.
A promise.
Yeah, promises to never again destroy the earth with a flood.
And there's that symbol of the covenant.
The rainbow.
The rainbow.
This beautiful reminder of God's faithfulness, God's mercy.
I mean, we go from these very personal stories of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, to this massive, global event that reshapes everything.
Right. The scope of the Genesis narrative is pretty incredible, you know? It goes from the very intimate to the cosmic.
And, even after the flood, humanity still can't seem to stay on the right path, can they?
Unfortunately not.
Which leads us to the Tower of Babel.
Ah, yes.
Another story about ambition, pride, and the limits of what we can do.
Right, humanity trying to reach for the heavens.
Literally trying to build a tower to heaven.
Yeah, and it's all about making a name for themselves, you know?
Classic hubris.
Classic hubris, trying to elevate themselves to a level that belongs to God alone.
Yeah. So what does God do?
God responds by confusing their languages, scattering them across the earth.
Okay, that's wild.
It's a punishment, but it's also a catalyst for diversity, you know?
Okay.
It's why we have so many different languages and cultures today.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
The Tower of Babel, it serves as this, cautionary tale, I think, reminding us that our efforts are ultimately futile when we try to rival God.
Yeah, there's only one God, as they say. Before we move on, I just want to remind our listeners to like, subscribe, and share this episode.
Yes, please do.
You can also find the deep dive on Spotify and YouTube.
We'd love for you to join us there.
We appreciate your support. So we've covered a lot of ground so far, from creation to the flood to the fall and some glimmers of hope.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. What stands out to you so far? What are some of those wait, what? Moments that have really caught your attention?
Oh, there are so many. Where do I even begin?
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into Genesis after a short.
I'm just kidding. We're going to keep going.
That's right. We're not stopping.
We're just getting started.
We're about to meet a man named Abram, who will change the course of history.
Oh, yeah. Abram's story is a big one.
It is, so stay tuned.
So, Abram, right. What's remarkable is it all starts with a command from God. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you.
Wow, that's a big ask.
It is. It's a call to leave everything familiar behind, everything you know, everyone you love.
Comfort zone gone.
Gone. Step into the unknown.
Yeah, and it's not just a command.
No.
It comes with these huge promises.
It does.
God's telling Abram, you're going to become a great nation, your name will be great, you'll be blessed, and through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. Talk about pressure.
Yeah, but that last part, that's key, right?
Yeah.
That's the first indication of this chosen people, this lineage that God's plan for humanity is going to unfold through.
So Abram, who later becomes Abraham, He really is like the embodiment of faith.
He is. He leaves his homeland, his family, and sets out on this journey just based on God's word.
I mean, that takes guts.
It's a huge leap of faith.
Huge leap of faith. And his journey, I mean, it's not easy.
No, it's not a walk in the park.
Not at all. There's famine. There's that whole thing in Egypt where he, like, passes Sarah off as his sister because he's afraid.
Yeah, there are moments of weakness, doubt, fear, you know?
Yeah, very human.
Yeah.
He's not this, like, perfect hero.
No.
He's a guy wrestling with his face, trying to figure this whole thing out.
Absolutely. And then there's that crazy story of him rescuing Lot from the war between the kings.
Oh, yeah. Like, out of nowhere, action hero.
I know. It's like suddenly we're in an action movie.
Right.
Which shows his courage, his loyalty. He gathers his men, he pursues these captors, and he's victorious.
Yeah. And then you have that weird encounter with Melchizedek,
Melchizedek, yeah.
king of Salem.
King of Salem and priest of God Most High. Yeah, very mysterious figure.
It's like a little foreshadowing.
It is, isn't it? Of the priesthood, the idea of someone mediating between God and humanity.
Interesting. Okay, so throughout all of this,
All these trials.
all these trials, Abraham's faith is tested.
Tested but strengthened.
Okay, but I think the biggest test has got to be like the promise of a son.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, especially because like Abraham and Sarah are old. Yeah, it seems impossible.
It does. It seems completely improbable, and yet they cling to this promise.
That's faith.
It is.
And then you have like the whole Ishmael situation.
Right. Born for Sarah's servant, Hagar.
Another layer of complexity.
It is. It adds this like rivalry between the sons of the free woman and the slave woman.
Which kind of foreshadows future conflicts, right?
It does. Yeah, those tensions between nations.
Okay. But ultimately,
It's Isaac, the son of promise.
the miracle baby.
The miracle baby, born to Sarah in her old age.
Yeah.
He's the one who carries the covenant forward.
It's like God saying, like, watch this.
Yeah, I can do anything.
Yeah, I can do the impossible.
Exactly.
So we can't talk about Abraham without talking about the big one.
The sacrifice of Isaac.
Oh, man.
It's a tough one.
It's such a, like, difficult story, you know? Every time I read it, I get chills.
It's so raw, so emotionally charged.
It's one of the most, like, I don't know, powerful, disturbing. I mean, what a story.
God commands Abraham to take Isaac, his beloved son, the son of promise, to Mount Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering.
I can't even imagine.
It's beyond comprehension.
To be asked to sacrifice your own child.
The child that you love, the child that you waited for, the child who represents the fulfillment of God's promises.
It makes you question, like, everything.
It does.
Like, how do you as a scholar even approach a text like that?
It's a text that people have wrestled with for centuries, you know?
Yeah.
Some see it as a testament to absolute obedience, right?
Yeah.
A willingness to surrender everything to God.
Okay.
Others see it as a condemnation of child sacrifice. Like,
Oh.
this is a barbaric practice that God would never condone.
Right.
And some see it as a foreshadowing of the ultimate sacrifice, God's own son, yeah.
It's a story that just, like, stays with you.
It does.
It makes you think about faith, sacrifice, our understanding of God. I mean, wow.
Yeah, and it's a turning point in the narrative too, right?
Yep.
From this point onwards, the focus shifts to Isaac's descendants.
Which brings us to Jacob and Esau.
The twins.
Oh, yeah. The drama continues.
The family drama.
Family drama. Their rivalry is, like, intense from the womb.
It starts in the womb. Yeah, and I think it resonates with anyone who has siblings, right?
Totally.
Those complicated family dynamics, the competition for love and attention,
Yeah.
the jealousies and betrayals, you know, that can happen even between the closest of relationships.
It's like they wrote the book on sibling rivalry.
They did. They really did. So Jacob, the younger twin, he's portrayed as cunning, ambitious.
A little bit of a trickster.
A bit of a trickster, yeah. Well, Esau, the older one, he's impulsive, headstrong.
And then there's the whole birthright thing.
Oh, the birthright, yeah.
Jacob tricks Esau into selling it for a bowl of stew.
A bowl of stew.
Come on, Esau.
I know, right?
Yeah.
You'd think he'd hold out for something a little better than that.
And then he deceives his dad, Isaac, into giving him the blessing.
Yeah, it's full of deception and intrigue.
So much drama.
But it raises those questions about inheritance, right? About human ambition versus divine providence.
And it also, like, highlights the importance of the birthright. You know, the inheritance of the covenant promises that were passed down from Abraham to Isaac and now to Jacob.
It's about carrying on that legacy.
Exactly. And Jacob's story, I mean, it's a story of transformation.
It is. He flees from his brother's wrath. He works for his uncle Laban. He marries Leah and Rachel,
Whoa, 2 wives.
2 wives, and he fathers 12 sons who become the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Okay, so his life it's a roller coaster.
It's a tapestry woven with blessings and hardships.
Love, betrayal, loss, reconciliation.
All of it.
And throughout it all, he's wrestling with his own flaws,
He is.
his own tendencies towards, deception and manipulation.
He's a complex character, that's for sure.
And you can't forget about that wrestling match with God.
Oh, yeah, that's a pivotal moment.
It's like the ultimate wrestling match.
He wrestles with God all night. Literally. Yeah, and he emerges with a limp and a new name.
Israel.
Israel, which means he struggles with God.
Wow, that's deep.
It is. It's this reminder that faith isn't always easy,
No.
It's about wrestling with doubt, with questions, and ultimately surrendering to a power greater than ourselves.
I like that.
Yeah, and then of course there's the epic tale of Joseph,
Oh, yeah. Jacob's favorite son.
the favorite son.
The dreams, the betrayal by his brothers, the Technicolor dream coat. It's a story that's been told and retold for generations.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good Joseph story?
Right? Sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned.
Talk about a rough time.
Yeah. But then he rises to power in Egypt.
Yeah, he does. And through it all, he maintains his integrity, his faith in God.
It's a story about forgiveness, redemption, And I always get emotional at that scene where Joseph reveals himself to his
Oh,
brothers.
that's so powerful.
The reconciliation, the tears, it gets me every time.
It's beautifully written, and it sets the stage for the Israelites' descent into Egypt, paving the way for the Exodus.
The Exodus. Now that's a story for another deep dive.
Another time, yeah.
But it's incredible how all these stories weave together.
I know, it's like this grand narrative that spans generations.
That is. And before we jump into the final part of our Genesis deep dive,
Okay.
I want to remind our listeners to like, subscribe, and share this episode.
Yes, please do.
You can also find the deep dive on Spotify and YouTube.
We're everywhere.
We appreciate your support.
Uh-huh.
So we've journeyed from the creation of the universe to the family sagas of the patriarchs.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Now we're moving towards the closing chapters of Genesis, which deal with the Israelites' time in Egypt and Jacob's final blessings and instructions to his sons.
Stay tuned.
It's fascinating, how Genesis shifts. It's subtle, but we go from focusing on these individuals like Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, to the fate of like a whole people, the Israelites.
It's like zooming out to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, we've had these personal family sagas. Now we're looking at like the beginnings of a nation.
Right. Setting the stage for everything that's to come.
Right. The future of Israel.
And that transition really begins with Jacob's family settling in Egypt.
Right.
And, it was Joseph. He orchestrated this whole move
Right.
during the famine to make sure they would survive.
Smart guy.
It's really amazing how God used Joseph's, difficult journey to ultimately save his whole family.
It speaks to God's providence, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Even when things are bad, God is working.
Yeah, God's got a plan.
God's got a plan. Yeah, and what's interesting is how Pharaoh, he's initially very welcoming to the Israelites.
Yeah, he gives them the land of Goshen.
Prime real estate.
Right. Perfect for their flocks and their herds.
He recognized their skills. They were shepherds.
And he even puts them in charge of his own livestock.
Yeah. He's like, you guys know what you're doing.
That's right. Take care of my animals.
I trust you.
Yeah, so it's a time of peace and prosperity for Jacob's descendants.
They're flourishing.
They're living the good life.
They're thriving in this new land.
But we know, of course, from the rest of the Bible that they don't stay that way.
Unfortunately not.
The book of Exodus picks up with the Israelites enslaved in Egypt.
Right. That's a whole other story.
That's a whole other deep
A
dive.
whole other deep dive, yeah.
But it's interesting how Genesis, it kind of hints at this future conflict.
It does, yeah.
There's that verse in chapter 48 where Jacob says to Joseph, Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow.
Ooh, foreshadowing.
Yeah, a little bit of foreshadowing.
Definitely suggests a future struggle for land, that the Israelites are going to have to fight for their place.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not going to be a walk in the park.
And then we come to Jacob's final days.
Mm-hmm.
He gathers his sons together to pronounce blessings upon them.
Yeah, and these blessings, they're like poetry.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Almost like mini prophecies, revealing the character and the destiny of each tribe.
So they're not just like, good job, kid.
No, they're much deeper than that.
Yeah.
They're rich with symbolism, imagery.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so Judah, he's described as a lion's whelp, destined for kingship.
A lion's whelp. Okay.
Yeah, and the text says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be.
Wow.
Powerful stuff.
So that's a reference to the future Davidic line of kings.
Yeah.
And ultimately pointing towards Jesus, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's Joseph. He's described as this fruitful bough,
Okay.
blessed with abundance and strength.
Yeah, fits.
Yeah, it does. And the text reads, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob.
I mean, it's beautiful.
It really reflects Joseph's life,
It does.
his trials, his triumphs, how God was with him.
Yeah, how God sustained him.
So these blessings, they're not just about individual tribes.
No, they're about the future.
Yeah.
They paint this picture of the nation of Israel.
Its potential, its relationship with God.
It's like Jacob is leaving behind this roadmap,
Yeah.
this spiritual legacy for his descendants.
Passing the torch.
Passing the torch.
And then he ends his life with this like really poignant request.
Oh, yeah. He asks Joseph to swear.
Right, to swear that he'll carry his body back to Canaan,
Back to the promised land. Yeah, to be buried with his ancestor.
even in a foreign land.
Yeah, his heart was still yearning for that land.
That's powerful.
It is. It speaks to that longing for belonging, for returning to one's roots.
And Joseph, he honors his father's request.
He does.
After Jacob dies, there's that beautiful scene of reconciliation.
With his brothers.
His brothers,
Yeah, they come to him afraid now that their father's gone.
yeah, thinking he's going to get his revenge.
Right. But Joseph reassures them. He says, fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, grace,
Yeah, powerful stuff.
He sees the bigger picture.
Yeah, and he chooses mercy instead of revenge.
Exactly.
I mean, what a lesson for all of us.
It is.
Trust that even when things are bad, God can bring good out of it.
Redemption is possible.
Yeah, and so with that act of forgiveness, the book of Genesis comes to a close.
It does, yeah.
The stage is set for the Exodus.
The next chapter.
But the themes and narratives of Genesis, they continue to resonate, don't they?
They do. I mean, creation, fall, covenant, exile, redemption, these are like the foundational ideas that shape so much of Western thought.
It's amazing how much is packed into these first 50 chapters.
I know, right?
From the creation of the universe to the beginnings of a nation.
It's a story of beginnings,
Yeah.
of humanity's relationship with God, the power of faith.
You know, before we wrap up, I want to remind our listeners to like, subscribe, and share this episode.
Yes, please do.
You can also find The Deep Dive on Spotify and YouTube.
Come join us.
We appreciate your support.
We do.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the book of Genesis. We hope you've learned something new, gained a deeper appreciation for this incredible text.
We've just scratched the surface, really.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
So much more, yeah.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic.
Can't wait.
Until then, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for joining us.